Hey, hello and welcome to your gentle yoga for back pain. So we're going to be targeting specifically the back around the spine, but also because the body is so interconnected, we're also going to be focusing on the surrounding muscles. So you're going to want a few props for your class today. I've got a set of yoga blocks. If you don't have those at home, really big supportive books can work as well. You're also going to want a pair of myofascial release balls. And if you don't have those, tennis or lacrosse balls will work really well. A yoga strap and some blankets and a bolster. Now, if you don't have a bolster, a couch cushion can be nice, or several more blankets that you can stack on top of each other to kind of create a bolster. But we're actually going to start with some gentle release for the back. So for this one, you're going to want 2 of your blankets. One is going to be just to the back of your mat, just to kind of give your head a little bit of support so we can find a natural plumb line for the spine to rest in. But the other blanket, you're going to want to unfold a couple times. So you have a pretty decent amount of fabric here, probably about 2 feet by 4 feet. And we're going to roll just a little bit along that long edge. So you can do this a couple ways. You can fold it like accordion style. So you've got 3 folds and you have like maybe an inch or 2 width of fabric. Or you can actually roll up the blanket and create like a little rolled bolster. So however you want to set yourself up, we're going to place the blanket that we've just created, either the fold or the roll, and we're going to want to put that right underneath our scapula or right underneath the shoulder blades with our head on the blanket behind it. So as you start to come into this, just make sure you're not on that first rib cage, but you're actually in the shoulder blades. And so once we come down, we have this next blanket for support. The arms are going to be on the side of the blanket with the rest of the head and the upper body. So just making sure the arms aren't down on the side of the blanket with the legs. So if it feels like the arms are hard to get there, just find a position of that blanket that can be right underneath the scapular region. And then allow your arms either to find this cactus shape where they're bent at the elbows, or if that doesn't feel comfortable, maybe straightening them out more like from the shoulders like a T. But you should feel this gentle sensation where the chest is kind of elevated and lifted and almost making this rounded shape as we release through the thoracic spine, which is your mid back. You can straighten the legs if you like, but just notice if that puts any extra pressure in the lumbar or the low back. It might be nicer to just bend the knees, walk your feet out a little bit wider than hips distance, and then knock the knees together to give yourself some support. And once you start to find yourself in this supported posture, notice if there's any areas that feel a little extra tense or tight or rigid. Maybe we're not used to finding these supported back bends. So maybe unintentionally we've stiffened the shoulders or the neck. Maybe we feel the sensation of pushing the back into the props or into the floor. Can you start to just let all of that soften? Let's start to let all of that go. Maybe even if it feels safe to do so, to close the eyes. And just start to scan the body from head to toe, looking for any tension that we can gently soften. As you start to settle in, start to bring your attention or your awareness to your breath. And not necessarily manipulating in any way, just notice where it ends and where it begins. Notice if you can feel the belly rising and falling, or if it's more the chest rising and falling. And although we're focusing on our back release, the body is so connected. So the upper body cross syndrome is where we might be having back pain, but it could be coming from a tight chest where we sit at a computer all day and we kind of round forward with that hunchback. So this first posture is really trying to invite us to open up through the upper front body, to allow the pec muscles that are contracted and rounded all day long to really start to open up and stretch, which in turn, where they connect with your back, will help your back feel more released and more open. So there's this beautiful relationship between the anterior and the posterior body, the front and the back body. So if you feel especially tight in this first posture, maybe it's a little uncomfortable, that could be a beautiful thing to keep working on, is stretching through the pecs and the chest area of the front body. And we'll take just a couple more breaths here. Hopefully you're noticing that it's starting to open up a little bit. And we're going to keep our props exactly where they are. And it doesn't matter which side you want to roll onto first, but we're just going to roll onto the side so that blanket underneath the back is now underneath the side rib cage. And you might need to either grab a block or fold the head blanket up a couple more times so we can find a more natural plumb line through the neck. So if without it, you've got that head kind of collapsing to the floor, that might not be so nice to the cervical spine, the neck spine. So maybe bring a prop where you can find that neutral alignment. And just notice if this top hip is rolling open, so we're more into a supine twist. And we want to really just be on the entire side body. So find this alignment through the hips. And you should feel this bolster right along the side rib cage. And then we'll take that top arm up and over, just draping it over that head. So you feel this contraction through the side of the body that's on the floor, and this lengthening through the side of the body that's more towards the ceiling. And just notice if we're holding the top arm up with muscular engagement, can we literally just let that arm rest on the head and let it be very passive? And you've got all of these little muscles in the ribs, these intercostal muscles. And the ribs connect with the mid-spine. So all of this is interwoven together. So again, even if we're not specifically stretching the area that might be tender, we're starting to target all of the surrounding tissues to invite all of it to release, to let go of the tension and the stress that might be existing in the soft tissues. Now, as you bring your awareness to your breath, see if you can't start to notice it in the sides of the body. So feeling your waist lift as you inhale. And release as you exhale. And start to notice where you're feeling this. And all we're going to do from here is not roll onto our back, but This arm that's overhead, slowly start to take it behind you. So now you're somewhere between the blanket roll being on the back and through the side rib cage, with your chest somewhat open towards the ceiling. And you're coming into this very gentle spinal twist. Let the arm that went behind you just really soften and release. And with every exhale, just start to feel your body releasing more and more over into this twist. And notice how that feels along your spine and your back. And if it's uncomfortable, make any adjustments you need to find more softness. So you can really just surrender into the shape. And take one more breath here. And then slowly let the rest of the body follow as you come back onto your back. And all you're going to do is roll onto the other side. I'm going to adjust my props so I don't have my back to you, but all you're going to do is roll over. So we're on the other side there. So that roll is right on the side of the rib cage. You've got that blanket for the head as well. And then take this top arm up and over, just let it drape. And again, feel that stretch throughout the entire side, all those intercostal muscles. Try to soften the rest of the body, make any adjustments you need. And where the bolster is, you should feel like a compression into the rib cage and all of those little muscles in between. Really try to soften your top arm, let go of any muscular engagement to support it, and just let it drape on the head. And again, just bring your attention to your breath. See if you can't breathe into the sides of the rib cage. As you inhale, feel the compression in the blanket deepen. As you exhale, sense that softening. And really just approach this with that curious mind of where do you feel this? Where can you soften to support yourself even more? Take a couple more breaths here. And then again, just think of taking this arm that was overhead back behind you as you just let the body orient itself to follow that lead. So now you're just in this very gentle spinal twist with that blanket roll, connecting where the ribs surround towards the back and the middle. Your chest somewhat open towards the ceiling, and the back of the head still supported on a blanket. And then even though we can't see it, just start to sense how all of the muscles around the spine are just wrapping towards it, giving it that support. Maybe you even feel the soft tissue starting to release as the spine finds gentle, nourishing movement. And then we're going to unravel and come all the way onto the belly. Now you might need to make an adjustment here from the blanket because we don't want it to be kind of pushing into the chest, we still want it on the front of the rib cage now. And the blanket that was supporting your head, you can just slide it out of the way. So kind of nestling this rolled blanket right underneath that rib cage, and then coming into a Sphynx pose. So we're on the forearms. And you can let the head be soft, relax the legs, relax the glutes, maybe even find a gentle rocking. And just notice if you're feeling a pinching sensation in the low back. Maybe adjust that blanket so it's supporting you. So the blanket's kind of holding us up in this back bend rather than us having to muscle into it and hold it. We really want to focus on releasing the lumbar spine here. And take a couple more breaths. And then all we're going to want to do from here is, as we lower all the way down, is slide the blanket from underneath the rib cage to right underneath your ASIS or your hip bone. So go ahead and just lower that down till it's right along that bony protrusion of the hips. And you might need to make any adjustments. You can walk yourself back or you can adjust, but you should feel like those two bony protrusions in the front of the hips pushing into that compression. And then lower your head by coming onto either the hands or the arms. And just feel that gentle compression throughout the line of the hip bones. And take one more breath here. And then slowly release, bring the hands under your chest and thinking of unraveling yourself one vertebra at a time as you press yourself up and off of this blanket roll. And then you can set that off to the side. So we're going to move into some myofascial release or muscular and fascia release for the back. So for this, you're going to want your two myofascial release balls, or again, if you don't have those, tennis or lacrosse balls work really well. And just have one of your blocks within arm's reach. But I'll show you kind of where we're going to go, because once we're down, we're just going to keep rolling. So we won't really be coming up. So at first, we're going to want to find the top of the trap. So when you can pinch this big chunk of muscle here on the top of the shoulders, we're going to come right on that back edge. Now, throughout each section, we're going to want to just be on either side of the spine. So we're just going to start with about an inch or two between them. And then they're going to come right in between the shoulder blades, or right in between the scapula. Then we're going to come right below the scapula, so kind of right along that bra line area or the back of the chest. Then we're going to come right beneath your bottom rib cage, which for some of us, we can actually palpate that and feel where the rib cage ends. And then we're going to end in the lumbar spine and the glute med to finish. So because we're actually going to be rolling up with it, it can be nice to start towards the bottom of your mat so you've got some space to go. So again, just make sure you've got that block within arm's reach, because two of them, we're going to want the block to support us. So as you start to come down, again, if you can pinch that big chunk of meat right there in the shoulder, roll onto one side and place your first ball right behind that, and then roll onto the other side and mirror it on the other side. And so it should feel like it's right in the big chunk of meat in the neck. A lot of us know what that feels like, and it should feel pretty good here. A lot of us really like neck and upper shoulder massages, so that's really what we're getting. We're going to stay in each spot for about 2 minutes. So this might be enough, and this is where you want to stay. If you want a little bit more intensity, it can be nice to take your block oriented on its lowest setting and then slide that right underneath your tailbone and your sacrum area. And that just helps push a little bit more body weight into these myofascial release balls, which can help release some of the tense fascia and help rehydrate all of that tissue. So in each one we're in, just try to soften the body. Try not to be rigid or stiff. And then keep coming back again to your breath. Let your breath be your anchor. And the more you can soften, the more benefit you'll get. So really just enjoy the self-massage. And if it feels good, you can maybe start to reach the arms overhead and take them down. But really for today, it can be nice just to enjoy the stillness, to allow the compression to start to release tense tissue. Especially when we're dealing with back pain, it can be nice just to take it more restorative and less active. And maybe even start to notice the shift where the body starts to really release as that fascia starts to let go. And really lean into that. And take another deep breath here. And all we're going to do is lift the hips enough to slide the block out if we added that. And we're not going to sit up or move anything else, but we want to kind of bring the balls right in between the middle shoulder blade area. So not at the bottom of the shoulders and not where we are now, but about 1 to 2 inches below where we are now. So to achieve that, the balls will roll. All we have to do is lift our hips up and roll down 1 inch or 2. Now it should kind of feel like my head has to be really cocked backwards in order to achieve this. So again, taking the block this time behind the behind the back of the head, can help us to find that natural plumb line again throughout the neck and the spine, so we're not hyperextending the neck and putting more tension in the body than we want. So those balls should be right along the spine, so not on the spine, but right on the edges of the spine and right in between the middle of your shoulder blades. And again, this should be another one of those spots that feels really good for most of us. But that doesn't mean if it doesn't feel good that there's anything wrong. You just might need to release some of that tense fascia in this area. Again, I invite you to just soften and to settle into that stillness. But if you are craving movement, this one can be nice to just give yourself little hugs and release, and then just alternating which arm's on top as you hug and release. So I'll leave that up to you, whether you stay still or whether you find gentle, nourishing movement. So wherever you took it, just settle back into your breath. Take another deep breath here. And then first, just remove the blocks from underneath of you. And then again, we're just going to roll. So walking the feet in towards the hips. lifting the hips up and rolling down just another inch or two until you find the bottom of the shoulder blade, and then releasing down. Now we might be getting into some more tender spots, so really try to just soften with your breath, especially if the mid back is tight. And if we feel pinching sensations, we might actually be on bone. So if you feel any of that, just you can reach underneath of you and adjust the balls however you need, so it feels more restorative and less pinching or painful. Again, just come back to your breath, try to soften. And the arm movement won't really make a whole lot of difference down here. So I invite all of us just to stay in that stillness and try to soften the body. And maybe notice when we first got into this, it felt really intense. Can you start to find that shift where it becomes more comfortable and maybe even enjoyable as the fascia tissue starts to restore and rehydrate under this compression? And mindfulness is, newer studies showing, so big into our proprioception awareness and our interoception with pain management. So we live in bodies where our back hurts a lot. Being really mindful to how things feel in our movement patterns and in our restorative aspects like today can go a long way into how we're perceiving these pain communications. Take a couple more breaths here. Now you can, again, just lift the hips and roll to the bottom of your rib cage. I personally like to actually place them though. So I'll pick up my balls and then feel around for the bottom of my rib cage and place the first ball right next to the spine on that side, and then roll and feel around for the rib cage on the other side and do the same thing. So the ball should be kind of right in the middle of your back. If you were to just kind of draw a line right in the middle of your back, they would be right there, right along the edges of the spine. Kind of finding this release through the erector spinae, those ropey muscles that are pretty broad across your back. Maybe even into the deeper multifidus that runs right along the spine. And your erectors are a little bit more superficial, but the multifidus is a deep stabilizer. So when it can become a little bit tight or it becomes even inactive, it can be really nice to start to tap into that so we can bring it back to life and encourage it to kick in when it needs to. Just let your focus be on your breath. Feel that softening throughout the body. And then take another breath here. And go ahead and just start to leave the balls where they are, but come onto the forearms. And then slide the balls down an inch or two. And then we're just going to gently lift the hips and just roll forward and back throughout that lumbar curve. Just take a couple more rolls here. And then slowly lower your hips. And we're going to slide the balls. You can stay down, but I just want to show you we're going right along this upper ridge in line with your sacrum, your tailbone, and kind of moving out laterally more into the glute med. So you're not in the meaty part of your glute, but we're just right outside of that. So we're not in the lumbar spine where when it starts to turn more into glutes, and the balls are kind of on the outside edges. So allow yourself just to melt in there. Making the adjustments you need. But it should feel really nice right along that ridge of your upper hip. And you again can stay still, but if you're craving movement, it can be really nice just to find the most gentlest or windshield wipering of the knees side to side. And take just a couple more here. And then slowly bring that rock all the way back to stillness. And then lift your hips up and just remove the balls, place them off to the side. Go ahead and straighten your legs out, laying flat onto the floor. And just notice how the entire posterior or back body feels from the shoulders to the hips. Notice if you felt any shift of release. Maybe you had specific trigger spots where one felt better than the other. Just take notice of all of those things. And then rolling onto one side, you're just gently going to press yourself up to sit. And we're going to come into a gentle forward fold. I'm sorry, little one, you're going to have to leave. She's pretty stubborn. So for this one, you're going to want your blocks and a bolster. We're going to create a ramp to help us in our forward fold. So placing one of your blocks on a low setting, and then the other one can either be mid or high, depending on how your back feels. If your back is really tight, the higher your incline, the more supportive it's going to feel. And then obviously the lower, and you're going to be able to find a bigger of a fold. Okay, come on. Then lower that down. And then we'll go ahead and take the legs kind of straddling this. Now, depending on how you start to round and find your forehead onto the bolster, if you still feel any kind of pulling or tugging sensation on the low back, it can be nice to also just place a blanket underneath the forehead, which will help elevate you as well. So take a moment to find yourself, get yourself all set up. And then we're not going to hinge forward with a flat back. We're really thinking cat spine here, rounding the back and really trying to just let all of the back muscles and vertebra open up, softening through the shoulders. Notice if we're tense anywhere, maybe the hips or the legs that we can soften. And then as you're rounding the spine, see if you can't feel this activation through the front body, specifically through the core. Imagine these muscles hugging in and around the spine to give it the support it needs to find this flexion forward. So maybe you noticed a difference between just being passive and then hugging that abdominal wall in to support you. Notice how that changes the sensation through the low back and the thoracic. And just let this feel really nourishing throughout the entire back. And take a couple more breaths here. And then slowly release and feel free to dismantle this ramp you've created. We're actually going to place the bolster towards the back of our mat now. And we're going to want one of our blankets. So you can take the rolled one if you like and unravel it. And we're going to just fold it in that little accordion style where you've got just those 3 folds, and place it to the back of that bolster, which is just going to give our head a little elevation over the back. And then also taking the strap. Now the strap's not necessary, and if you don't have a strap at home, you can just bring the legs into butterfly, so bottom of the feet together with the knees out. You can also use your other blanket and kind of wrap it around the ankles to hold you in your butterfly shape. So if you don't have a strap at home, that's okay. You can just find the shape without any props, or again, you can wrap your blanket around to feel supported. But if you do have a strap, go ahead and make it into a pretty loose loop. So just bringing that piece under the metal. So you're making one big giant circle. And then we're gonna just twist one end. So your giant circle now is like an infinity. And go ahead and have your back towards your bolster. And you're gonna want just a little bit of space between your tailbone and your bolster. So it doesn't have to be a whole lot of space, but just enough space that so when you start to come down, you feel that tailbone pushed against the bolster in a really supportive way. So once you have this little figure 8, go ahead and butterfly out the legs. And we're just going to use our strap around the knees to kind of hold them in place there. And then go ahead and start to lean back. And you should feel the strap is supporting you. If it's still a little loose, you can always grab onto that little bit of tail and pull until you have that tightening sensation to support the legs. But you should feel a nice tilt of the pelvis. So you feel the psoas muscles opening in the hips. You feel this natural lumbar curve with support. And then the blanket is right along the ridge of your shoulder blades, giving your cervical spine a lot of support as the entire thoracic spine, mid-back, is supported on your bolster. So a lot happening, but everything should feel supported and kind of hugged in with your prop. And again, if you don't have the strap, that's okay. You can just sit in the position or use a blanket. Just start to feel the body getting heavier and heavier. Feel your hips relaxing, your legs relaxing. If you are using that strap, just let the thighs melt into it as it holds your legs in space. Keep sensing the body feeling heavy as it just melts into the props beneath you. Let's start by slowly bringing the knees together. You can slide that strap off so the feet are to the floor and the knees are up. And if you had the blanket, you can just use your feet to kick it off. Wherever you took the arms, gently bring them in more towards the body. And we're going to just try to come up one segment of vertebra at a time. So gently tucking the chin to the chest. Feel 7 little lifts through the cervical spine, little lifts throughout the thoracic, little lifts throughout the lumbar, and then one final lift throughout the sacrum. And then once you're back to the top, take a couple of breaths here. Notice if there's any difference between now versus when you started. We're just finished with a little bit of a twist throughout the back. So taking the right hand to the left knee and find a very passive supported twist. So the arms are doing a lot of the work here and this twist over to the left. And you can really just kind of soften into it. And then really gently just take it over to the other side. Feel that really nourishing twist throughout the spine the other way. And slowly come back through center. Let your right ear fall to your right shoulder. Feel a gentle stretch throughout the left neck. And then let the chin fall towards the chest as you take it to the other side. And then let the chin fall to the chest again. Feel that gentle release throughout the back of the neck. And slowly lift the head up. Thank you so much for joining me today for your gentle flow to help restore back pain. Keep coming back to this practice or any of the techniques that you found helpful to help keep rehydrating and nourishing our backs. Until next time, be well.